Hey everybody, welcome to our career crash course. I'm Erica Starke-Knight and I am so excited to share these what you need to know conversations as you consider a career in the media industry. Now, I've been in the business for almost 30 years and I decided to have some of my friends come by who are crushing it in the industry and have some real talk with you. Today's topic, audio engineering. And I'd like to introduce my friend, Mr. Grant Dennis. Hey, Grant.
Hey, Erica.
How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, good, good. Thanks for joining us on Career Crash Course today.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate the invite.
All right, so let's jump right into it.
All right.
We're talking about all things audio engineering today. Let's start with, since we are talking to college students, where did you go to school and what was your major?
So I went to school at a media arts college in Orlando, Florida called Full Sail. At the time, it was just Full Sail. Now it's become Full Sail University. And it's kind of it's a film school mainly, was sort of how it was then. And they offered an audio program and also it was like graphic design. So my degree program was actually audio engineering.
Nice. Well, and sorry, I did not share with our listeners that you have been in the industry for 10 years with television network experience. You are a 6-time Emmy Award winner and have a ton of experience. So I wanted to make sure I put that in at the very top. So our guests—
It sounds crazy. It even sounds crazy to me. So
I know you're like, are they talking to me?
I know, right?
Yes. So I'm excited to call you friend and really, really, without sounding condescending, really proud of what you have done and have enjoyed thoroughly working with you over the years. So this is
Thank you so much. The feeling is mutual for sure.
So I want to ask you, when you started out in college, what kind of courses did you take specifically in your major, audio recording?
So the way that they actually had the curriculum designed, it was almost kind of a boot camp type of thing. It was a year-round 12-month program. For me, it made sense. I was a little later going to college than most people, so I needed to kind of get somewhere quickly. And so there were some general education classes, like we all have, a little bit of English and things like that, just to round you out. But the core classes revolved around studio production. This was a more or less recording studio.
Right.
And that was at a time too, again, it's crazy how fast things have moved in that period of time. I think it's been about 15 years since I've been out of school. And at that time, recording studios were still kind of a big thing. It was kind of phasing out. Technology had advanced and it advanced quickly to where people were starting to be able to have Pro Tools in their own homes, to where you didn't have to go to a big studio to, just record a record. You would still go there for your, mixing and mastering and things like that. And especially if it was a label project or something, but not just for somebody doing demo recordings and things like that. I say that to say that there was just sort of like studio etiquette courses. Just this is how, you operate in the studio. This is what you can expect to be there all night long.
Yeah.
The classes would be like literally from like 1 a.m. to 4 a.m., 5 a.m.
Oh, wow.
To kind of break you in. And then you have to go sit in a classroom from like 9 to 1 or something. So it really put you through it. But
that was good training though for the real deal.
Yeah, it really was. Again, like the curriculum kind of bounced between different studio consoles, just to be versatile on whatever you may find out there, hardware wise, like the big kind of things that took up almost a room, furniture pieces really, that you still see in some studios, and also all the way down to software recording, digital audio workstations and things like that. And then there was some music theory in there, because there was some people that were musicians and they were there for that. So I got a little bit of that. I can, chop around the keyboard a little bit. I couldn't do that before. I probably can't do it now, but at the time I was okay.
You should have told me that before this. I would have had a keyboard out and see if you could still work that out.
Yeah, I don't think that would have been a good recording here.
So now let me ask you, that's great information I wanted to share. I said that you had 10 years of network television experience, but before TV, you were actually recording music. Tell us a little bit about that part of your career.
So that, yeah, that probably is not as notable as the TV recording part or TV production
Hey,
part.
it's how you cut your teeth.
Yeah, that was more or less just like if anybody had a project that they wanted to do or something like that, we come over and record it. I just had like a computer in my bedroom, really, and with a little interface, and we could do more things. Like I couldn't do bands or anything really, but I could do, if it was like hip hop or just like techno, EDM, things like that. Somebody maybe had like turntables or electronic music, but then at the same time, my stepdad, he was in a band. So that was one thing that I did do with the band was I wouldn't necessarily record them, but I would be sort of their like house engineer, that when they would go to these bars and stuff to play, they had, front of house console and stuff like that. And most of the time these bars didn't have anything like that. So they'd bring their stuff and I'd go out there with them. So that was sort of my experience on the run of how to do bands and things like that, and more, instrumentation and, doing front of house and monitor all at the same time.
Now let's talk about that, because that's a lot. That's a lot of industry speak, but it sounds really interesting. So when you're doing audio engineering, in a venue like that, what exactly do you do?
So essentially, your job is to make sure, first of all, everything is connected and that it works and that everybody's signal is clean and that they're clear. They can all be heard clearly, from vocals to instruments and things like that. Front of house, what I mentioned is essentially the person who provides the mix to the audience, the speakers that are coming back to the crowd, what you're sending to that and the proper mix. That's front of house. And typically that person is somewhere in the middle of the venue or the back of the venue, so that they have a good vantage point to be able to hear properly of what's coming off on stage, to be able to have a good mix in the house. The monitor engineer in a more sophisticated setup would sort of be set up off the side of the stage to the stage right or stage left, but backstage. And that's what gives the musicians their mix, because sometimes they have a different mix on stage. They all want to hear something different. They want more of this or more of that. Like the rhythm section being, the drummer and the bass player, they feed off of each other a lot. So they kind of want more of themselves than they would want like a lead guitar or something like that.
I often hear artists who are singing when they're saying, give me more reverb, give me more XYZ. That's what you're talking about.
That would be the monitoring engineer right there, because he's providing or she's providing pretty much all the feeds to the individual musicians. And just like that, if it's a vocalist, if they want effects or something like that, that will come from them as well. You try to keep them happy so that they're given, their best performance and are comfortable on stage.
Nice. And so what you learned in college sounds like it helped with that part of your career. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. That was really the launching pad, because that's what, I really went to school for was, audio engineering. And when I think of audio engineering, I think of, a person sitting behind a console that's mixing or, getting the signal routed to where it needs to go, and really just kind of creating the canvas, so to speak, that the musicians, as they play, you get, the proper mix and all the levels right, and all the timbre right, and make sure everybody's happy, really, like I said before.
Yes. And creating an optimal experience for the listeners, for the audience.
Exactly.
So that's a good point. So that is audio mixing and engineering, but you also moved into television, and you've done Super Bowls and horse races, etc. So talk about how you transition those skills to television audio engineering, and what the different terms are for that.
Yeah, I just kind of mentioned that because I felt like in television production, I maybe became more of an audio technician or a specialist. Because there are different roles in there. You still typically have an engineer. In TV, they call it an A1, which is like senior audio. And then you have like an A2, which is kind of audio assist. And the A1 would typically be the person that would either be in the control room in a studio environment, or on a remote production, and such as sports or something, would be in the remote truck mixing the game and providing all the different feeds and things like that to where it goes, where the technician would be more of a person that's essentially boots on the ground inside the venue, setting the microphones up, miking the talent, doing all those different type of things and troubleshooting from that side of it. So if there's a problem, you're the one that's got to run over there and find out what's wrong and try to get that fixed so the A1 can, have a good show and make sure the audience is happy.
Now, what is that stress level like, troubleshooting on a big sporting event as the A2?
And I've often said, like, I never knew that that type of stress and pressure even existed in this world, just because you feel so under the gun. And live television is sort of a culture of you you have to fix it now. And it doesn't take long. As soon as there's sort of a hint of a problem, somebody's losing their mind somewhere. And it's all
Literally, like
that.
in your headphones, you hear them losing their mind,
Yeah,
right?
sometimes for sure, especially if you're the A1 and you're in the hot seat, so to speak, and you've got director and producer that are calling the shots in their own various ways. They'll be the first to let you know, and they'll be lighting that guy up. So if you're the A1, you're getting it,
Trickling
first hand.
down.
But if you're the A2, you might get it there too. You need to go find out what's wrong and find out now. And obviously some things can be very simple and some things can be kind of complex. And you often kind of overlook the simple things because our minds kind of go to, well, this could be a complex problem. So I know so many times that I have started from a couple links down the chain where if I just started from the easy thing, is it plugged in still? Crazy
Is it
things
on?
happen. Yeah, exactly. These crazy things happen in venues.
Right. So let's talk about some of those exciting venues. So you've done hockey games, you've done the Preakness and the Belmont horse races, you've done football. What's the most challenging? What are some of your highlights?
I would say that probably the most challenging things have been the events that have been overseas. I did the Olympics in 2016 in Rio.
Ooh.
And I had an amazing experience there. I was with the crew that we did opening ceremonies, and then they moved us to track and field. So we went there, and then it was like a 2-week setup, 10-day setup to get ready for opening ceremonies, because that really was different than a sporting event. That was almost really like an entertainment show with sports sprinkled in there. So that was a really kind of different experience.
And was your mindset different? Because like you said, you're talking about an international stage and you're on this crew.
My mindset was different just because I'd never done or been anything like that before. And I just, somehow found myself with like the A crew on that. So it wasn't even like I got to start over at like badminton or, some, maybe not to disrespect badminton if there's any badminton players out there, but you know what I'm saying? Like that doesn't, from a network scheduling standpoint, NBC is not going to show that in prime time the way it would Usain Bolt's final go round.
Yeah.
Like the microscope was on us. So, and it was all the top, technicians and producers, directors really in the world that were there. Plus you're so far from home, your sleep schedule's off, you don't speak the language, you don't know what to order at a restaurant. There's all kinds of crazy things that go on.
And you have to perform at
Oh
your
yeah,
A
yeah.
game,
And they were
regardless.
really long days. Some of them are 16, 17-hour days. So you really just have time to, get back to the hotel, get cleaned up, go to sleep and do it again. But where I mentioned where we actually moved venues was everything that we did at opening ceremonies. We packed that all up and then moved the very next day to Olympic Stadium, which was absolutely huge, and set it all up again in a different way. So I was like, man, I just felt like the energy is contagious. So when you're around people that are a step beyond you, a step above you, it brings more out of you than what you would just have ordinarily, so to speak. So I think a lot of that happened there too. That it was just being around just a lot of great talented people that, just propelled me along too, for me to get through it and be able to perform at an optimal level.
Now that sounds like, that sounds like somebody at the top of their game. Like that is the premier job. So what about leading up to that? What kind of a sporting events did you work in? What kind of arenas to get you ready for that big stage?
Leading up to that, I got connected with that particular crew by doing horse racing. There was, because this was with NBC.
And let me just tell everybody, we're not just talking about regular horse racing at the track up the road. We're talking about the premier, like the Olympics of horse
Triple
racing.
Crown. Yeah, this is the Triple Crown. This Kentucky Derby, Preakness, and Belmont, which is the premier really horse racing events in the world. And as far as like culture of Americana, Kentucky Derby is always usually on Memorial Day weekend. So it kind of ushers in spring and things like that. So I gotten a call that they had like an opening. They needed like an extra audio guy to do. It wasn't even with like the normal crew. It was like some sort of offshoot where they would do feature packages, meaning that would be interviews or something like that they would then record a few days before throughout the days leading up to it. And then when the show came on, because they were on air for about 6 or 7 hours with this whole thing. I mean, the horse race is 2 minutes,
Wow.
but they make it this whole big spectacle. So they have all of these other things to try to, lead you up into it, because horse racing is not like, the NFL or the NBA, where we have a season of it and the America, society is sort of tuned into this. So, if it's the NBA, you see LeBron in the preseason or whoever, Steph Curry and those guys. And as the season goes on, the ups and downs, the storyline writes itself. So when you get to the NBA finals, there's a lot more than just going out there for 48 minutes and playing basketball. There's, they have a television that always finds a way to like add emotion into all of this. So the way that they do it is sprinkling the color and the flavor. Mm-hmm. So that was kind of my job with the first Kentucky Derby that I did, was to do these feature packages. And that was crazy. And I think the first one that I did was Bob Costa sitting down with a horse trainer that had been accused of doping horses and things like that. Oh, wow. And it was like, the only people in the room were myself, 2 camera guys, a producer, Bob Costas, the guy, and 3 lawyers. And I'm just like, oh man, like, I don't know what's about to go down in here, but
you're going to capture it regardless. Man. That's a different kind of pressure.
Yeah, it really was. So, and then I kind of rolled into when it came race day, because it's such a big extravaganza, and a place like Churchill Downs is so much bigger than a normal arena.
And tell everybody what that is.
Churchill Downs is the racetrack in Louisville, Kentucky, where they run the Kentucky Derby. It's been around for 100 and some years. I mean, it's just, and there's pictures everywhere of all the people that have been there. It's crazy. And it's definitely kind of a who's who, because there's so many celebrities. It goes about first time really seeing like a lot of celebrities in one place. They do fashion shows and all kinds of stuff like that around Louisville. So as a feature package guy, there's a couple other things that we did. We're going to some of these parties and, getting some footage from there too.
Now, what kind of celebrities are you talking? Movie directors? Are you talking about actors?
It was a combination of actors, actresses, athletes, things like that.
Did you get starstruck? You can't get starstruck in this business, right?
No, I mean, I have a few times. There's been a couple times. The first time I saw Dr. J, like I know that like that might not be like the main one for a lot and but
like he's like was the LeBron, right?
In his day, he was like, Jordan before Jordan, and just being a basketball fan my entire life, like he was a little bit before my time. So I didn't really get to see Dr. J play a lot.
But he's a legend.
He's a legend, and one of the 50 greatest players of all time. And he just carries this air about him of just kind of class. Like when you saw him, you just knew he was different. So I would say him. And then like I met Ron Isley one time. Like Ron Isley was another
from the Isley brothers.
Mr. Big, man.
I don't know if the kiddos watching this, the students know who that is. Check it out, y'all.
Let me tell you something. That's a smooth dude right there. I don't know.
Wait, did you mic these guys? Did you actually do audio for it?
So Dr. J, we did have an interaction. He was doing something, and I had to mic him up and kind of let him do his thing and kind of hang out with his people until he was done, and then all of that. So we had a bit of an interaction. Ron Isley was just kind of in passing, you just kind of see him and it's like, that's Mr. Big. And so there's probably been a few. It's hard to say. I would say, and I don't want to go off on a tangent here, but, and this is completely unrelated to all of this, but I cannot not mention this person if we're going to talk about this. You and I did an interview a few years ago with the great Maya Angelou. Yeah. And we were lucky enough to not only meet her, but we spent the afternoon at her house.
Yes.
And I don't know if I've ever had another experience quite like that. And just the whole lead up of it, I remember,
how hype I was.
Yeah, like just the instructions and like, is this going to happen? And like, this is really going to happen. Yeah. And then I remember it became real when we had like our team briefing about it. And like, okay, now this is how it goes down. When we get there, everybody is Mr. or Ms. Like, this is how we talk to each other. And it was just sort of like this, like she just ran a tight ship. And it's like,
Right.
all
That was
right,
her insistence, not me, the
yeah.
producer.
Yeah, no,
Right.
that was her. Like that's how you act there. And it didn't matter if it was her or if it was, maybe somebody that worked on the grounds or something like that. Everybody got the same level of respect. And I just remember just thinking how special that was and how such a once in a lifetime opportunity that was.
Yeah.
So, whatever athletes or entertainers or anything like that, I cannot not mention Maya Angelou with that being like really kind of maybe the career highlight of the person that I got to spend time with and see.
Oh yeah, that is 100%. I'm in agreement. That was one of my career highlights. So do you, when you are working as an audio technician or specialist, when you are working with celebrities, or if you're working with, somebody who's telling you, pouring their heart out about, trying to make it to the Olympics, is there a different mindset? Is there a different level of thinking? How do you prepare yourself in those situations, especially when it's your first time?
Yeah, I think that it's almost like you're just kind of along for the ride. It's almost just kind of like you trust the training that you have,
Mm-hmm.
and just because there comes a point where at least with me at first, and it still gets this way sometimes, but maybe not as bad. I would just really get so nervous that I could not even think straight almost. It's like you're in the moment. This is so much bigger than me. How did I get here? I can't believe that's like that dude really sitting over there, because he's really just another man. Like when you're there, it's just another person or woman, but them from, in another way. So what happens is it's just kind of, you just go into action and it's almost like your body just takes over, your instincts take over.
Yeah.
And you just try to be, I call it almost like a delicate aggression, because you have to assert yourself, but you are certainly not a player in the room, so to speak, but you have to do what you have to do. And your job is essential, whether they think so or not, you still have to do that. So there's a certain way that you have to just assert yourself, but still sort of be polite and really fluid, I guess is the best way to put it.
Yeah. And I love what you just said about your instincts take over. And that instinct comes with training and
Sure.
preparing.
Exactly.
You always hear that phrase, and I don't know who to attribute it, the original phrase to, but there's no such thing as luck. It's a situation where preparation meets opportunity.
Right.
So
Exactly.
it's not just being in the right place at the right time, because your instincts can't take over if you don't sharpen them, right?
Right. Right. Or you're not paying attention, or, if you get kind of caught up in the moment, you still have to remember that you're there to do a job.
Yeah.
You have plenty of time sort of to take it all in, but at the time you just gotta like, this is my sole focus in life right now, is to perform this particular task.
That's right. That's awesome, Grant. So how do you, because I do want to ask you about the Super Bowl also before we get to our 20 questions. You said for when you were talking about the horse racing, you got a call from a guy. How do you or a woman, how do you put
Mhm.
yourself in that position to at least be on that call list?
Uh, Networking, really, it was just a network. I mean, I definitely get deeper with things, and I definitely feel like it's like kind of like, God or the universe, whatever you believe
Oh
in,
yeah.
that meet you in a place sometimes that you couldn't get there yourself.
Right.
And I've often said, and I thought about this interview, conversation beforehand, when you asked me to do this, and if it was at a time like to give, anybody advice, how to get into this or whatever. But it really is. I know with me, it's like I couldn't duplicate it if I tried. It's just sometimes you get to a certain place, but you put yourself in a position, and then something else just takes over. So for me, just to get to the point to even be like in a network, I'd really tried hard. I studied hard. I was assertive, and just I wasn't always like that. But once I got on this path, and once I decided that like this is what I'm going to do with my life, and like I say, I went back to school later than most people. And once I made that decision, it's like, that was a decision. So I can't let anything stop me now, no matter who tells me I can't do this, no matter how, how unlikely this may seem. I don't know where it's going to end up, but I have to at least put myself in that position. So I found myself in North Carolina. I was working for UNCTV, which is actually where we met.
Which is now, right, PBSNC.
Yeah, PBSNC.
Yeah.
And in the person who hired me there, who was the manager for technical operations, Karen Pierce, who will forever be one of my top 5 people in life. She's done more for me than arguably anybody, professionally, certainly, but even as a person. She had been, years in networked and stuff like that. So by knowing her and sort of being associated with her and on her team, that when, the call went out, or whoever was out putting the feelers out, do we know anybody, that, she offered my name up. Or it may not even have been her, but it was somebody in that network. But it all kind of went back to her.
Yeah.
Because it's like one person, and then that person, it's like exponentially kind of, goes out from there. Yeah. And that's kind of how it happened. And the person, the guy who was at NBC, who was their head audio engineer and arguably one of the best audio engineers in the world, actually was at UNCTV at one time. So
is that
Wendell?
Yeah. Wendell. Yes.
Yeah, Wendell Stevens.
Wendell Stevens.
He is just remarkable in so many ways, and is really sort of the industry standard of, what an audio professional is. And again, so many ways, not just his ear or his mixing techniques, like just how he conducts himself and the way he goes about things, and just the sacrifices he makes to be at the top. I mean, it takes a lot. It's not just about being good at what you do. There's a lot more involved.
Good point.
And I kind of maybe went off on a bit there, but it was really the network, and that's how it was. It's like they didn't know me personally, but they knew that these other people knew me, and that I had, proven myself to them, and that, was a good person, because a lot of this too is just trying to be a good person.
Yeah.
Again, like sometimes the most skilled people don't always get the breaks. You have to be somebody that people want to work with.
Right. Don't crack under pressure.
Yeah. Or just
hothead.
Yeah, exactly. Hothead, negative, things like that. You have to, in my experience, people that are, open to learning, that are respectful, that, come, show up on time or early. I mean, that's huge. Just those type of little things. Character. It's all about character, really. Certainly you have to know what you're doing, but there are so many people, I've said this so many times, and you mentioned Super Bowl a couple of times. The job that I actually did for the Super Bowl was a job that I felt like I was so unqualified for, that there were so many people out there that had more experience and had done this job. Why did they pick me for that? And, ultimately it kind of came down to the fact of just that they liked working with me, and that this, it wasn't, the make or break position for the show at all, but it was a step up from what I had done before. But it really just came down to, we were going to be there for 2 weeks, and who do you not mind?
We talking now?
This was 2018. This is Eagles Patriots, when the Eagles won their Super Bowl in Minnesota, Minneapolis. And even with the overseas trips, with the Olympics and the World Cups and things like that, you would often hear people say that, when we put together this crew, we went to figure out who could we stand for a month, or who could we stand to be around for 2 weeks, because that's another thing too. The road takes a toll on you, and you get tired, and people get cranky, and they get negative, and all of that. So if you can kind of just keep your wits about you, and just try to maintain being a good person the whole time, and all of that, it goes a long way.
I love that. Sound words of wisdom. Thank you, Grant. Sure. All right, so let's shift to our rapid fire questions.
All right.
You ready for this?
I think so.
Remember, there's no wrong answer.
All right.
Just want your opinion. This is not industry standard. This is what Grant Dennis has to say about this. All right, ready?
Okay. Take it with a grain of salt.
Take it with a grain of salt, everybody. Did you hear that? Okay. Finish this sentence for me. You should consider a career in audio engineering if
that's what you want to do with your life. If you think that you love audio and creating and whatever audio engineering is to you, and that's what you want to do with your life, then you should do it.
Nice. Name something an audio engineer or audio technician is responsible for that a lot of people may not be aware of.
So not only does an audio engineer or technician or whatever provide the mix of the microphones and everything that's going out to the audience, there is a ton of communication that takes place within the venue and the compound that you're responsible for as well. Everybody needs to talk to each other. You think about an announce booth in a sports game. I'll just use that for a quick example. You have the play-by-play and color announcers in the booth. So that's what you hear is you hear their microphones, but there are a lot of people up there in some cases. There's typically a stage manager, there is a stats person. Sometimes there are, on bigger shows, there are researchers, making sure that everything is correct. There's typically a spotter, which is telling the play-by-play guy, where the ball is at, whether it was a penalty, how many yards, what the down and distance is. So all of these people are on a headset and they all have to talk to each other. They have to talk to somebody. And it's not just one line. There can be, on some of the smaller football shows that I do, we'll have maybe 4 or 5 different PL channels they call party lines, which is like if the producer needs to talk to Erica, if she's stage manager, that she's on a PL with the producer. And there can be other people on that, and there can be anywhere up to maybe 50 of those PLs on some shows. And that is really where a lot of the work gets done. You can set up microphones, plug them in. Do they work? Yeah. Okay. They're clean. Good. Let's move on. But the comms part of it takes a lot.
That's good stuff. It's not just one person, everybody. You don't just get Beyonce, you get the whole.
Right. And that's something that nobody ever sees, is that side of it, for sure.
Good stuff. All right, next up. What is, I think you might have just answered that. What's the most common misconception in your industry? Would you say what?
No, I would say the most common misconception is that travel is glamorous. Because it is not necessarily that. When we think about going new places and taking trips, I always thought about it in ways that I had before. I hadn't really traveled extensively, but I'd been a few places. But typically you go somewhere that you want to go and you get off the plane and you go to your hotel, or maybe if you're visiting a family member, there's somebody there with a smile to greet you. When you're traveling for work, it's not like that at all. You deal with early flights. I've left my house at 2-3 o'clock in the morning. How in the world do you get to sleep the night before, thinking about all that, plane delays, cancellations. Not only that, when you get there, it's time to go to work. And
a lot of hangry folks, I would imagine.
Yeah. And the other thing too is especially with sports and TV compounds, they're always like in the back of the building. Like I forget who said it. I don't know if it was like Johnny Cash or somebody had said that he's been to like every venue in America, but he's never come through the front door. And I think that that's kind of like how it is for us. I always say, like, if you want to find the TV truck, go look for the dumpsters, because it's somewhere around the back of the building. And like, nobody ever thinks about that. So that's what I would say. Travel can be fun, but it's not glamorous.
That's a good one. All right. Let's see. Best speaker, JBL or Bose, in your opinion?
That's a good question. I would say that like a lot of things when it comes to gear, would definitely be personal preference. The way companies typically engineer their things are differently for different applications. And just for this particular application, if it was like a JBL versus a Bose thing, JBLs typically sound warmer, but Bose sounds cleaner. It's the way that they do their bass response. So depending on what you're looking for or what you prefer, there's always options there, but it's definitely typically a personal choice.
Got it. I got it. All right. Top three, quick. What are 3 top things you should prepare? What are the top 3 things you should do to prepare if you want to pursue a career in audio engineering? 1, 2, 3.
You should do to prepare. One, I don't know. If I don't know about a physical thing, I've always been about mindset. So one is always just be open.
Mm-hmm.
No matter how you think things may be, they're typically different.
Got it.
So if it's different than, what you may have thought it is, it doesn't mean that it's bad or wrong. It just means maybe it'll take you, a little bit to adjust or recalibrate to, what's going on. And the second one, I think maybe would kind of be in the same way, is just be fluid again, to just be able to, adapt to different situations that may come your way, because you may find yourself in different applications, different job settings, dealing with different personalities and things like that. So you just kind of have to be fluid, and just work your way through it. And then I would just prepare to be patient.
Nice.
As much as we all want to get to the top now, and it feels like we live in such a microwave society, everything does not happen overnight. Very few things happen overnight, and any good thing that's going to come to you does not happen overnight. So with social media and things like that, to sort of portray an image of, this person's on right now, or this person's on, and you feel like, you're not doing that, that doesn't mean that you're not on your way there. And it can always take a turn at any time. Earlier in this conversation, when you mentioned, that when I got the call to go do Kentucky Derby, which was my first like big event, I didn't know that was coming. I mean, I had no plans of that. And in fact, that day I was doing a very mundane show. It was a very simple show, a nobody, just in a mixing, in a control room. And then like a call comes, and then, before you know it, your career is going in a different path. So just be patient with yourself, just, be assertive and as diligent as you can be, but it's not happening. It doesn't mean that other things are happening in the background.
Nice. Love it. Love it. All right. What is your strongest piece of advice for someone on their very first audio gig?
I would say to just believe in yourself. Just have self-confidence that you can do it.
Yes.
Even if you're nervous, like I mentioned before, like we've all been there. I certainly have, more than one occasion. And even the top people that, we've spoken about here too, have gone through that part of it too. But, if you just believe in yourself and stay confident that, you're going to do the right thing, then you will.
Yes. Love that advice across the board. All right. 2 more. What do you know now that you wish you knew when you were getting started in your career?
I don't know. I think there's more things that, like, I'm glad I didn't know. I think that's probably like the answer I
That's
would
pretty
give.
good. That's
It's
pretty
just like,
good.
it's better not knowing, man. They say ignorance is bliss. It
Yes.
is.
Yes. I
It
concur.
is.
Okay. Last question. Considering everything that you've experienced in your career, what advice would your adult self tell your college-aged self
Oh
as it
man.
relates to this industry, not other things?
Um, Maybe similar as I said a few minutes ago, is just prepare for things to change. Just be prepared for the work environment, the path, you as a person, all of it to change, because we don't stay the same, as forever. In fact, I think it was somebody said one time that like every 5 or 7 years we become like a different person,
Mm.
because our life experience and all of that just evolves us. And if you're not evolving, then maybe you're not doing something right. So it's good to be uncomfortable, and it's good to it's good to fail, because you learn from those things. If things go smooth, then you don't know how to fix it. You don't know really what you did right. But when so I would say just prepare for change. Obviously our world has changed, and look at the last year that we just had. I mean, I don't think anybody, could have ever prepared for anything like that. But those that had already sort of had a more open mind to, I'm not so, rigid in who I am or what I am, probably had a harder time than those that were like, all right, well, where can I find the opportunity in this? Where do I fit in now? And how do we move forward?
Yes, and that is such a great point to end on, Grant. This career path as an audio engineer certainly proved to benefit you even in a pandemic, because everything went virtual and
Yeah, it
everything's
did.
on Zoom, and everyone always needs audio,
Yeah. Yeah,
right?
it was, when everything shut down, sports were done. Everything was sports wise, everything was just shut down, and it was just email after email of you've been released from this, you've been released from that, which is completely understandable. And then again, networking, someone that I had met that, I didn't even see this person as any, sort of contact or anything. We were just friendly. And every time I saw her, we worked when we worked together, we just always had nice conversation. And she just happened to know a guy that had started a live stream studio a few years earlier. And you can imagine his business just exploded.
Yes.
So where he was sort of a small business that, was still in a stage of growth, he just sort of took off. So now he needs a crew. And he asked his friend, do you know anybody that, that runs camera, that does audio, that does any of that? And just because that, her and I had, had been friendly, and just kind of hit it off in times where we had been like in sort of a mutual stressful situation, sort of had tried to find some light moments and all of that. They gave me the call. So that really helped me out last year. So where all the sports stuff went away, now I've got this whole new sort of playing field. And it was good for him and for me. We kind of equally needed each other. And we sort of learned together. We're still learning together. I'm still working with them. And he actually became my biggest client last year, and we're still doing stuff now. So, and it couldn't have worked out better. So it's like, you just never know. But again, like you said, though, you never really know how versatile, your job or your industry can be until it's put to the test. But communications, media, whether it's audio or video, we live in a world now that is really based around technology in some way, shape, or form, and media to be consumed. So there's a place out there for you.
That's right. Audio. Everybody's always going to need it. Great sound advice, words of wisdom. Loved chatting with you, Grant. Dennis.
Of course. It's always so good to talk to you.
You too. And I wish you Godspeed, and I hope to see you again soon.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody, for joining Career Crash Course Audio Engineering. Until next time, be well.